All right, it is 6:30 p.m. on Tuesday, September 3rd, and I will call the City Council meeting to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councillor Eber?
Here.
Councillor Holen?
Here.
Councillor Wheel?
Happy to be here.
Councillor Sheldon?
Here.
Councillor McGuire?
Here. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next, we'll have audience participation. Just as a reminder, I'll call names in the order that you're signed up. The rules of our procedure are up on the monitor. Each speaker will have 5 minutes. Speakers cannot disrupt the orderly function of the meeting. Remember, it's not a dialogue. There's no back and forth. And the little timer on the dais, on the podium, will give you an idea of your time limit. Thank you very much. The first person on the list is Russell Stewart.
Good evening. It's nice to be back. I'm here, my name is Russell Stewart. I'm at 10 Sandy Lake Road, Cherry Hills Village, 80113. I'm here tonight representing the 411 voters who signed the petition to submit a measure to amend Section 3.9 of the Charter. I want to speak to Resolution 16 first. This is a citizen's measure and setting that ballot title. If you recall, the last time a citizen's measure came before this council was just 2 years ago. And we looked at it and we had some extensive discussion about it too, about how to handle setting the ballot title because it hadn't been done before. And we agreed upon really what I thought was a great process. And that is, that was Council Bill 13 of 2022, and Section 2 of that states, for the purposes of Section 311111, the ballot title for such question shall be the text of the question itself. And we did that after a lot of actually thought and conversation because we wanted to solve two things. One, we were very concerned with openness and transparency and making sure that the voters in Cherry Hills Village had on the mail-in ballots, the paper ballots, the actual text of the language that would change the charter. So it says a transparency. We didn't want a title. We didn't want some summary of it. We wanted the actual text in the paper ballot that the voters could read and understand exactly what was happening. So that did that. And that ballot question back then was actually almost 400 words long, but it was great. It was perfect. The second thing it did was, the second and principle it set, was that we thought council shouldn't modify, alter, or change the measure's true intent and meaning. The actual words used, and this was proposed by Rob and Earl, it was their words, and we said, let's use their words exactly, because their words express the true intent and meaning of the measure better than anything else. No one else could summarize it any better. That reflects the true intent and meaning of the measure. Passed unanimously, overwhelmingly. I thought it was great. It's a measure for transparency and good government. Resolution 16, unfortunately, backtracks and goes back on that. Resolution 16 violates those two principles. The first principle is it will not put on the ballot for voters the actual text of the language and the change to Section 3.9. They won't know what it is. All they'll have is a summary. Secondly, and that's a huge thing with transparency. Secondly, the second principle is by not using the question of the text of our measure as a title, it fails to express the true meaning and intent of the citizens measure. For example, and I only have 5 minutes, so I could go on for half an hour, but here's just an example. Number one, the words prohibit public access do not appear in the citizens measure. That's an argument of opponents. That's not an expression of the intent or meaning of the measure. It misrepresents grossly what is going on here. And another example, the citizens measure guarantees, our measure guarantees that the east side will remain open in perpetuity for public access. This Resolution 16 doesn't mention that. Number three, the citizens measure assures that the west area will remain as a natural area with limited public access as required by the conservation easement. Resolution 16 doesn't mention that at all. And fourth, here's an example of an affirmative misrepresentation. Resolution 16 misrepresents that citizens measure adds requirements to the conservation easement for managing property. That's false. It doesn't add anything. It's a proper interpretation of the contract, and particularly, I think I take what your meaning is that there'd be city supervision. That's what Cara Openland says the easement means. And here's Cara Openland's letter, July 2nd, 2019, attention Emily Black. Here's Cara Openland's. We do not believe that the type and extent of public access in your proposal, sunrise to sunset, 7 days a week, is consistent with the conservation easement. Specifically, we do not believe it is limited, and it is not consistent with the preservation uses as defined. Translation, you're in breach when you open it up, sunrise to sunset. So here's how you could fix it. A motion tonight would be very easy. You could simply say, I move to adopt the text of the 2024 Citizens Measure as the ballot title, as was done in 2022, and thereby provide Cherry Hills Village voters the precise text of the proposed charter amendment for them to consider when marking their mail-in ballots. I'm out of time, I see here, but I have just a quick thing about 17, I promise. 17, the ballot question. Question number one, the last words, which have it, one would prevail over the other if they have more votes, is unlawful. It's a violation of the Carl statute. The Carl statute, it violates specifically.
Russell, please wrap up.
Thank you. Violates specifically 31.2.201.6. That provides that if a majority of voters vote for a measure, it's approved. You can't set any more conditions on it than that. What your language does is set another condition on it. It says,
I'm sorry.
In addition to getting majority
Your time
votes,
is up.
In addition,
I'm sorry, your time is up. I'm sorry, your time is up.
in addition to get the majority of votes.
Mr. Stewart, I'm sorry, your time is
Can
up.
I finish my sentence?
No, I'm sorry, your time is up. I've already allowed you to go over our time limit. These are our rules of procedure that we have adopted and enforced over our meetings. I'm sorry, your time is up.
Let me just add, I reached out to the city to discuss about this ballot title, and nobody responded. Nobody responded to me. I have not any.
I'm sorry,
5
your
minutes
time is
all
up.
I've had with the city to discuss setting the ballot title.
I'm sorry
for this
that your
initiative.
time is up.
That's a
thank
big
you.
change from the council that I used
The
to be
next
part of.
speaker is
I was part of the
Howard
council. I
Shermer.
talked to the politician. Thank you for the 5 minutes, Mayor. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Mr. Shermer.
My name is Howard Shermer. My wife and I live at 4100 East Quincy Avenue. I have three things on Quincy Farm, items I'd like to focus on tonight. The petition, governance, and the upkeep of Quincy Farm. The petition. I was one of the 5 people that initiated the petition, as I believe that our residents should have a say in how Quincy Farm is used and managed. We live in very close proximity, Quincy Farm, built our house 33 years ago. We knew Kat Anderson from 1990 through her death in 2012. When she decided to create the conservation easement in 2007, The 4 neighbors met with Kat in her home to go over her plans. It took great effort by the 4 neighbors to terminate the water company, hand over the Highline Canal rights, modify the agreements in place on the subdivision covenants, and revise other documents. It was quite a thick package of stuff we had to go through. This was done on the provision that the western portion, which affects all of us, was going to be a land preserve to protect wildlife with limited access to the public. This understanding was confirmed in writing by our attorney to us. It said there shall be no trails or hiking in the western area. I can provide that to council. It was on this premise that I agreed to the language in the petition, and the 404 people that signed the petition signed with that understanding. I expected that the city would place that language on the ballot title. It would be a clear statement of Kat's wishes. What I read in the agenda package is not what the petition stated. It was not the intention to create a different set of conditions from the conservation easement. Your ballot language simply is a misstatement of the petition language that tries to make it sound that the petitioners are bringing tighter constraints into vote. It is an apparent attempt, it seems, to defeat the petitioner's ballot by misleading voters. I urge you to use the petition language, not your misleading wording. Governance. My career was that of an engineering manager for 2 large global engineering companies. I have seen the best examples of governance and the worst. In my work, over 65 countries, developing and developed countries. The way the council acted on handling this Quincy farm management ranks honestly with the worst I have seen. Your use of an executive session without disclosing, even taking a vote in council without disclosing what you were voting on to the public is bad. Your use of, for us to have to go to an open records request in order to see correspondence within the city and the Colorado open lands, again, is really poor governance. No transparency. I urge council to be more open and not yield to the political battles that have detracted from running a good city. And lastly, Quincy Farm management. The condition of Quincy Farm is really terrible. It needs maintenance work on the structures, pond, and foliage. I understand that the work is being planned to fix the pond and big barn. That is really great. However, the rest of the farm needs attention. In my view, spending money on trails and placards and other things are not in keeping with the conservation easement of maintaining the farm. Really, not a good use of city money. In my view, Cat would never let the farm decay as it has since the city took control. The foliage in the west area, trees, grass, need immediate attention. There's an incredible amount of dead wood on the property. One tree looks like it could fall over and damage the Hopkins house. Those that travel down our lane are fearful that an overhanging tree could fall and hit our cars. The grass is a fire danger, and we were certainly lucky on July 5th that the fire was contained. There were no high winds. I have mentioned to the city that they need to cut the 2-foot grass like Cat did over the years. I believe that the city has tremendous liability in the farm for fire protection. The needs are being ignored. The advisory question on taxes is really a cop-out. The city knew when they accepted the farm there were going to be costs with ownership. Please live up to your obligations and say that there will now be costs through a tax increase to maintain the farm. You should not ask voters if they want to pay higher taxes. Please do not bias the voting
Mr. Sherman, I
with
need
that
you to
rhetoric.
wrap up, please.
And thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for coming. Nancy Sachs.
Hi, I'm Nancy Sachs. I live at 5410 Southbury in Greenwood Village. I'm just speaking from the historical perspective. I've been a district commissioner for Platte Valley Pony Club, which is located at the Village Club, for about 25 years. And I had long conversations with Kat and Candy in the barn before Candy died. And they, just with me, wanted to keep the history of Pony Club, to keep it a place for kids to have fun and do community events. So I'm just coming in to say how much I appreciate the historical perspective. Ellen has reached out to me. I was just there the other day preserving the ribbons. We took each of the ribbons from the past 30, 40 years, and we carefully packed them away. Spencer McLean was a presence in Pony Club in Cherry Hills Village. Her flight suit, she drove for General Patton in World War II. The goggles and her flight suit are there at Quincy Farm. And I so appreciate Cherry Hills and Ellen Anderson and the Quincy Farm Board taking the time to reach out to me to keep it preserved for the children. And I've taught some camps there, and I'm planning on doing more art projects there. And I just want to present the historical perspective, because that's what Kat and Candy talked to me about doing. And I was the young one and they were the old ones. Now I'm the old one. So anyway, that's about all I have to say.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
There's no one else signed up. Is there anyone else in the audience who'd like to speak? Seeing none, we will move on to the reports from members of city boards and commissions. Seeing none here, the consent agenda.
I'd like to remove item 6B from the consent agenda.
Item 6B has been removed.
Mayor, I'd like to remove 6A.
So the entire consent agenda. We'll start with item 6A then. Councilor
I would
Sheldon.
just like to note that I was not present at the last meeting, which the agenda meeting minutes are being reviewed, so I will not be voting on them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Move to approve the meeting minutes of the last meeting.
Second.
It's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And one abstention. Item 6B, Quincy Farm, Councilor Holland.
Yeah, I wanted to remove that just because this is a significant expenditure for the city, and it's a significant discretionary expenditure for the city, probably one of the largest discretionary expenditures we've ever had. And I think it's important that we take the opportunity to talk a little bit about, now that we're getting ready to sign that contract, what is being done, just a little update about that. And my understanding is Emily's ill tonight, which is unfortunate, but that assistant manager, city manager Goldie is going to provide some comments.
Sure. Good evening, Mayor and members of council. I am hopefully a good fill-in. I don't want to take any of the credit. Emily is taking this project from cradle to grave, and all of the work she has put in has been spectacular. So I'm just trying to fill in for her, not take credit for her work. As we all know, the journey that is Quincy Farm has been long and perilous. The journey is far from over, but we've reached a major milestone in the city's endeavor to improve the farm, make the property more accessible to the public within the constraints of the conservation easement. We can all agree that the big barn is probably the most significant and important building on the farm. And to quote Kat from an interview with her in 2010 about the farm, I told Cherry Hills they couldn't tear down the barn. They could tear down all the rest, but not the barn. It's too nice. Knowing the importance of this building, the city and its partner, the Cherry Hills Land Preserve, chose to make the rehabilitation of the barn its first major project. So a little bit about the history, the timeline. We started long before June of 2023, but that's when Rogue Architecture was hired by the Land Preserve to do the feasibility study. Soon after that, the city hired Rogue Architecture to do the construction documents. This year in June and July, we put out an invitation for bids. We did our due diligence in August, and here we are now in September, asking council to approve the contract. So what is the rehabilitation doing? It's addressing critical deficiencies in the roofing, the roof structure, the wall framing, and upgrading all of the electrical. And then we are doing any necessary repairs that anticipate the use for visitor safety. So looking at making sure everything we do is safe and functional for special events, classes, those type of things. So we're going to have a small educational and gathering space at the front of the barn and retain the original stalls at the back of the barn. And I'd like to mention at this point that as much of the original materials as possible will be salvaged. Now, we're not doing any work on the outside, so that's going to be all original. We'll redo the paint. Of course, the windows will be restored historically, but we are keeping all of the wood paneling. It's all coming down so we can fix the structure and then going back up. All of the windows, doors, and hardware. We've already started taking some of the hardware as part of the contract. The contractor has to save all hardware. And so the city and the land preserve will say which hardware we want to keep, which can be reused. We're talking coat hangers, everything. So we're keeping as much of that historical interior as we can. In a lot of the cases, when you walk through the barn, you'll see stall doors that have been chewed by horses and window sills. We're leaving all of that. You will see those still. We're not sanding all of that out. We are cleaning it up and resealing it, but we think that historical look is really neat. And then you still see, that all these generations of horses that have been through here and where they've chewed on the stalls. So this is the current layout of the barn. The loft, the hay loft, will remain empty. That will not be open to public. The work needed to bring that up to code would be too expensive, and you'd lose a lot of that space anyhow due to the way that's configured as a hay loft. So the new design simply takes out some of the enclosed areas on the front or the north side of the barn. As you can see in this picture, we're retaining 4 of the stalls, and we are opening up the tack room and then opening up the first stall on the front to make the space usable for special events. And then this is what it will look like. You can lay it out in different ways, depending on if you're doing a lecture, an art class, whatever it is you're doing. The back 2 stalls, stall 2 and 4, they'll be usable for special event spaces, booths, or small classes, but they will also be retained to be able to house horses when we do have events for children to ride horses or learn about horses or other farm animals. So those stalls will be multi-purpose, but they will remain usable for having horses in there. So to the contract, in 2024, the city budgeted $760,000. 150 of this is to be offset by the Cherry Hills Land Preserve. The contract amount is $718,000. Staff is asking for a 5% owner contingency of the almost $36,000 for a total maximum expenditure of $754,328. Our contractor is raring to go. They will actually officially begin work as soon as the contract is signed. We have been meeting with them at risk right now to go over things, get some of the submittals taken care of because of the lead time. The one lead time issue we're having is the roofing material. So we wanted it to look just like the cedar roof that was originally on there. This is a composite cedar roof that's currently on there. So we're working through with them to make sure we can get those materials in and have the barn finished as soon as January of next year. So with that, if there are any questions, I can answer those, I hope.
Are there questions from the council?
I've just got.
Councilor Sheldon.
I've got one, and Jay, I don't know if it's for you or Doug, maybe for you, but of the 754, including that contingency, the owner's contingency, do we have in the city funds now the 150 from the land preserve?
We do not. We do not have an accounting as to where the land preserve is on their fundraising efforts, but we do not have that from the land preserve.
Okay, so we haven't collected that yet, but that is coming in, I assume, and we can rely on it so that the 760 that we had budgeted against the 754, we're really going to be more like 600 of city money and 150 of land preserve raised funds. Am I saying that right? I just want to make sure. It's been a little while since this all got brought back to us, so I just want to remember. I want to make sure I'm understanding this right.
That is the concept. We are relying on our partners to come forward with that 150. We'd hope to have it before the construction was finished and be able to not have to have the city pay the entire bill and then get the money from the land preserve, but have that money so we can pay the entire contract with it.
Mayor, I don't know if it's appropriate, if anyone from the land preserve might want to speak to that tonight, or if we just want staff to direct staff to find out and get back with us.
Yeah, I think it probably would be best if we have staff follow up with the land preserve around, I know their big fundraising event is coming up in 2 weeks. And so maybe staff can check in with the land preserve about
Status.
what their status and when they feel like they might be able to make that contribution. Yes, Councilor
Thank
Witt.
you.
Oh, turn on your mic.
Not cooperating tonight. Just a clarification. My recollection, and could be faulty, was that the land preserve was to fundraise 150, and then we had these improvements to the work. If they raised monies and spent it on programming, does that offset the contribution to offsetting the barn improvement?
That was not how I understood it. Now,
Okay,
maybe
the 150
the
was,
council understood it differently, but the 150 was specifically for construction.
okay. Well, that's good to know. I mean, it's one pocket or the other, I get it, but, okay, thank you. Thank you for that.
And we do have the full amount budgeted in the city's budget. So that isn't necessarily prevent us from approving this contract now, if you so desired. But-
Right.
Yeah, Councilor McGuire.
I'm trying to remember, I thought in the, we have I don't know if I'd call it a contract, but we have a
Memorandum of
MOU
Understanding.
with the Land Preserve. And I thought that had a provision in it that to the extent they raised funds, it was supposed to be put into an account with the city. Is that, do you recall that, or am
I don't recall that.
misremembering
I
that?
could be
Okay.
forgetting that, but I thought it was more general, our MOU, as in our partnership and relationship, and didn't have anything
Okay.
specific as putting that into
If we could-
accounts.
As a part of council's direction for staff to follow up on this particular issue, we will absolutely incorporate that element into our follow-up discussion with the land preserve.
Right, although I do think that the memorandum of understanding, it talked about raising that money separately, but it didn't talk about putting it into a separate city account. In fact, I think there were specific discussions about there's reasons not to do that. But that's my recollection from my time at the Land Preserve.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments?
I move to approve the construction contract with Halcyon Construction, Inc. in the amount of $718,408 with a 5% contingency of $35,920 for a total maximum expenditure of $754,328. I further move to authorize the city attorney to make such changes as may be needed to correct any non-material errors or language, or to negotiate such changes to the agreement as may be appropriate, and do not substantially increase the obligations of the city, and to authorize the mayor to sign such agreement when in final form.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. Moving on to item 8A, Council Bill 5, Series 2024, amending Section 2-3-40B of Chapter 2 of the Municipal Code concerning the delegation of certain contract duties and powers of the mayor to the city manager on second and final reading. Director Furman.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. As the mayor stated, this is the second reading of a council bill regarding the delegation of authority for certain contract duties from the mayor to the city manager. And there have been no changes since the council bill was first approved at the first reading on August 6th. This council bill relates to the city charter, section 5.4, which outlines the powers of the mayor. And this ordinance relates solely to delegating specific city purchasing duties from the mayor to the city manager. And the specific proposed duties to be delegated are outlined in charter sections 5.1 and 5.4. The mayor is responsible for signing all city contracts, enforcing those contract terms and conditions, and operating as the city's purchasing agent. The major reasons to request this delegation of authority are the city manager is responsible for daily city operations and is keenly aware of specific vendors, the city budget, and detailed operational processes. Delegating the city's contract signing authority to the city manager also improves the timeliness of contract start dates in most situations. The council bill also maintains consistency with section 2340 of the city code, which outlines the city manager's powers, which are similar to the mayor's responsibilities, including enforcing contract terms and conditions, as well as administering the city budget. I can take any questions if the council has. Otherwise, here's the recommended motion.
Any questions on second reading?
I don't have a question, but I do want to raise again, I don't think we have the authority to do this. In studying these sections again, certainly everything in 5.4, other than running meetings, is delegable. But contracts in writing binding the city are to be signed by the mayor under section 5.1, and there's no language that anything in section 5.1 can be delegated. So again, I understand that city council, or that council to the city has, believes that we have the authority to do this, but in my reading of the code, I think we need to modify the charter in order to do this.
Thank you for that comment. Any other comments or questions, or entertain a motion?
Okay. Move to approve Council Bill 5, Series 2024, amending Section 2-3-40B of Chapter 2 of the Municipal Code concerning the delegation of certain contract duties and powers of the mayor to the city manager on second and final reading.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Roll call.
Or it's roll call, sorry.
Counselor Eber?
Aye.
Counselor Holen?
Aye.
Counselor Wheel?
Aye.
Counselor Sheldon?
Aye.
Counselor McGuire?
No.
That requires a 2/3 vote, if I'm correct, and that passes. Moving on to item 9A, Resolution 16, Series 2024, setting a ballot title, and placing a citizen-initiated measure on the ballot for the coordinated election held November 5th, 2024. Clerk Gillespie.
Good evening, Mayor Brown, members of City Council. Staff is presenting for Council's consideration tonight a ballot title for an initiative petition to amend the charter. We're following a lot of state statute requirements tonight, so to go through the timeline, the statement of intent was filed on July 16th. The form of petition was approved by me on July 18th. The petition was submitted with signatures on August 7th. I certified to you all that we had sufficient signatures. The petition was valid and sufficient on August 27th. That triggered that at the next council meeting, which is tonight, the resolution setting the ballot title would be considered and passed by you all. Going forward, the deadline for notice of election to be published is this Thursday. That's already been sent to the villager, as it is based on the wording of the petition and not the ballot title. The 6th, this Friday, is the deadline for protest of the petition, and it is also the deadline for us to send certified ballot content to the county clerk. And then, of course, November 5th is Election Day. Here's the text of the proposed charter amendment that was in the statement of intent and on the petition. And the ballot title that is recommended by staff for your discussion. Just to note that the state statute does require that you set the ballot title, so you do have to set something tonight. And then the resolution outlines why staff believes that this is the best ballot title. Happy to answer any questions.
All right. Thank you very much for that. Are there any questions or comments? Do you want to make that motion?
I move to go into executive session under Section 246-4024B, revised, Colorado Revised Statutes, to receive legal advice concerning a citizen-initiated petition and a council-referred ballot measure to amend Section 3.9 of the Cherry Hills Village Home Rule Charter.
There's been a motion for an executive session. There's not, as you would notice, an executive session was not planned on the agenda, but the council can call one at their own discretion. So is there a second?
Second.
That's been moved and seconded. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Councillor Eber?
Aye.
Councillor Holen?
Aye.
Councillor Wheel?
Aye.
Councillor Sheldon?
Aye.
Councillor McGuire?
Aye.
That passes. We will move into executive session. We are back from executive session, moving on to item 9A, Resolution 16, Series 2024, setting a ballot title and placing a citizen-initiated measure on the ballot for the coordinated election held November 5th, 2024. Clerk Gillespie has already provided her report. I would entertain a motion.
I move to approve Resolution 16, Series 2024, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Cherry Hills Village, setting a ballot title and placing, out of breath, placing citizen-initiated measure on the ballot for the coordinated election held November 5, 2024.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Councilor Holen.
Just one comment. I'm in particular comfortable with this resolution, primarily because of the findings of council that the general understanding of the effect of a yes or no vote on the ballot question will be clear to the electors, and that the ballot title for the ballot question correctly and fairly expresses the true intent and meaning of the measure. And for those reasons, I'm very comfortable with this particular resolution.
Mayor?
Yes.
I'd like
Councilman-
to add that the full text of the motion full text of the initiative is reflected in the resolution as an exhibit. That's
Thank
another
you.
reason.
Any other questions or comments?
I'm good.
Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. Moving on to Resolution 17, Series 2024, submitting to the registered electors of the city an advisory question, setting its ballot title, and providing the order of the ballot titles for local ballot measures for the coordinated election held November 5th, 2024. Clerk Gillespie.
Good evening again, Mayor Brown, members of City Council. Staff is presenting for Council's consideration tonight an advisory question for the November 5th, 2024 ballot. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions for the clerk? I would entertain a motion.
I move to approve Resolution 17, Series 2024, a resolution of the City Council of Cherry Hills Village submitting to the registered electors of the city an advisory question, setting its ballot title, and providing the order of ballot titles for local ballot measures for the coordinated election held November 5, 2024.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? I guess seeing none, I would just state for the record and reiterate that similar to Resolution 16, the council finds that part of the resolution, Section 3, states that the council finds the general understanding of the effect of a yes or no vote on the advisory question will be clear to the electors. The ballot title for the advisory ballot question will not conflict with the titles of any other measure that will appear on the ballot at the November 5th, 2024 city election, and that the ballot title for the advisory question correctly and fairly expresses the true intent and meaning of the measure. That being said, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. Resolution 18, Series 2024, amending and restating the city's purchasing policy. Director Farman.
Good evening again, Mayor Brown and members of the City Council. This resolution for consideration amends and restates the city's purchasing policy. The purchasing policy under review tonight is a city financial policy that provides uniform controls and principles around the city's purchasing activities. The 2024 policy is a staff guide for the procurement process so that city funds are spent prudently and in the best interests of the city. The policy that was originally adopted in 1980 and updated in 2015 was updated as a result of reviewing other city Colorado municipality policies. The main goals for this update were to create a user-friendly document for city staff that spelled out clear procedures during various procurement situations. Also to add some operational flexibility, particularly for Public Works and the Police Department when they are in the field, and to maintain strong internal controls for prudent spending. These tables in the policy relate to the goal of maintaining appropriate internal controls. The Section 6 Spending and Signature Authority accomplishes this goal in many ways. It creates a distinction between budgeted and unanticipated expenditures, and creating varying spending limits for the type of expenditure, adding procedures and limits for delegating contract signing authority, incorporating tables to show spending limits and contract signing authority, and identifying a procedure for emergency purchases. And lastly, it provides reporting and a ratification process that provides council with additional oversight of city purchases. Tables 1 and 2 from this policy section are the main internal controls that govern purchasing in the draft policy. And only the directors and the city manager may authorize purchases up to the dollar threshold as stated in the policy. The tables also include the authorized signer, who is the staff person is authorized to sign a contract or purchase order on behalf of the city. This is really the transaction approver. The city manager may delegate signing authority to an authorized signer, as shown in the tables. The purchase level authority is also determined by whether the purchase is for non-capital goods or services or related to a capital asset purchase. These tables are the guidelines for authorizing and signing for a specific purchase if budgeted, and also the required procurement process based on the spending level. So for example, staff is required to obtain 3 or more written quotes for non-capital purchases of $20,000 to $50,000, or must use a competitive bid process for higher spending amounts and or for capital asset purchases. In tables 3 and 4 of the policy, these are the guidelines for unanticipated expenditures. There is additional table for non-emergency and one table for emergency-related purchase transactions. Now, the vast majority of the city purchases will fall under the tables 1 and 2 category. So these tables are for the few purchasing exceptions that may be unanticipated and may occur during the year. These expenditures are not specifically budgeted, but the purchases still have to be appropriated or go back to council and ask for additional appropriations. With these tables, the purchase amounts are roughly 1/2 of the thresholds as tables 1 and 2 that were for budgeted purchase thresholds. Thus, there's a higher level of internal control for unanticipated expenditures. Tables 1 through 4 are important components of this purchasing policy, and staff believes this section accomplishes the aforementioned goals. What questions do you have about tables 1 through 4?
Any questions?
Yeah, I don't have, I've got a question. It's not a question, it's a great presentation, but I just want to make sure. So authorized expenditures, are those expenditures that would fall under an appropriated amount passed by council?
Right, that are
Correct.
specifically budgeted for that intent as adopted by
Right,
council.
so if it wasn't appropriated, then it falls under emergency or non-appropriated, and those amounts are lesser at that point in time.
Right, I gave an example in the staff report about
Right.
the flock cameras, right? So they were unanticipated. There were still appropriations that were adopted by the city council, but the intent had changed throughout the year. So that's when a special request came before council.
Right.
For the flock camera.
Yep. Okay, good, thank you.
So,
And two more follow-ups on that, just real quick. So in that circumstance, there still has to be the budget to cover it, right? There still has to be within the total line item of that whole budget. So
in which
this isn't-
circumstance? You're talking now about
No, I'm using the-
non-emergency, unanticipated?
Yeah, I guess in any of these circumstances, the flock one being a great example, there still had to be other dollars in that line item available to spend. You couldn't go negative in that particular budget.
When you say that
unant-
budget, you mean the police department budget?
Correct, yes.
As for the
Yes,
example?
100%. And then the second thing is any of those unanticipated expenditures would then be reported to you as a sort of a reporting mechanism to make sure that you're fully aware that this is all going on and there's a transparency with council so that you feel comfortable that this is happening. So we're hoping to put all of this in place so that there's a certain comfort level.
Councilor Wheel?
Thank you, Mayor. I've a question about, anticipated expenses, unanticipated. We have, aggregates for this department's supposed to spend this much, and then when we go through the budget, as individuals and as a council collectively, there are amounts to be spent for specific line items. Are we talking about the specific line item level, or where are we drawing the line on anticipated, unanticipated? Is it aggregate amount, or is it an individual expenditure?
Well, I guess it's up to City Manager Kramer, but obviously the legal authority is at the fund level. So if there are appropriations in the general fund, or if we want to say at the department level, such as the police department, chief had some unexpended appropriations that he was going to move and utilize those for the flock cameras. So it could be at the department level. And sometimes there are some unanticipated contracts that might be budgeted. And so there could be something that comes up throughout the year that could take advantage of those appropriations that were for those unanticipated needs. And needs change throughout the year, so maybe you thought you were going to contract for something or make a purchase somewhere, but then those needs shift. And so then you have to reprioritize and ask for those expenditures for a different need.
So I would just clarify, the intent is clearly within the same budget, the department budget. It is not to sort of have a free flow across all city funds. It would be really difficult to track. These requests are usually made with the department and a director is usually saying to themselves, I know I have this money left over because that contract that we were going to have no longer happened because we found another solution, and that money is sitting there, and this aggregate is on sale. Jay, you can help me out here. But we're going to get a killer deal if we buy it right now, and that way we don't have to spend that next year. Let's use the savings that we had from that contract that didn't happen. We can do that now, and really make the most out of the taxpayer's dollar from that perspective. So the unanticipated expenditures really represent a small fraction of the overall transactions that we're talking about. That's why we're wanting to do all these extra steps, like report them to you, that we don't necessarily always have happen with budgeted expenditures.
But I think though, and this all makes perfect sense and is much more efficient. But what we're saying is like, because you're saying within department, so Jay's got a line item in there, buying a pickup truck for $100,000. And he goes, you know what? I want to get a whole bunch of rototillers, and that ain't in there. And I'm not going to buy that pickup truck this year, and I'm going to go buy those rototillers. That's what this policy allows.
Well, it would allow it if the city manager thought that was a great idea. However, that budgeted item was set by council, because that's a rather large item, and it would exceed the $75,000 for the non-emergency
75.
unanticipated expenditures. But yeah, it is attempting to lower those thresholds because it does recognize that this is a more sensitive decision-making process. There's a responsibility that exists among the staff that, if we do this, it is for circumstantial reasons that are taking advantage of situations that might arise.
And I get that.
So absolutely, that buck would stop with the city manager.
Okay, because I get that. I mean, and the thrust is, and this makes perfect sense, and nothing untoward would go on for the next few years and maybe ever. But the point is that's where you get into things when people start moving things around. You allocate and you appropriate for certain items, and then you say, hey, have at it. And we don't need to be involved. You just go with it. But when you start moving things around line item to line item within departments, and there are oftentimes good reasons, but that's where, and like I said, nothing like this, go 10 years down the road and there's a whole bunch of different people here, and you see that all the time. That's the thing that I would not want to see.
So the inverse of that's also true. I would agree with you, and there has to, through all of this is obviously a tool that exists in a lot of other cities. This problem, so to speak, has been solved in many other places. We are attempting to provide a version of that to you that I think offers additional transparency that a lot of other cities just don't do. And it's for that reason exactly, to communicate to city council that we understand that there has to remain that level of trust. I'll use the opposite example, though, as a way to illustrate why it might be helpful in the face of that potential abuse, because that's what that would be, abuse. Let's say we had another I don't remember my Blizzard years. 82, the Christmas one of 82, let's say we had one of those. And we just blew our plow budget and our materials budget so far out of the window. You guys are getting calls, dadgummit, and we're having to pay overtime, and we're contracting for other plows to come in and do things. And we just blow that budget. That $100,000 car, we actually may not buy, right? We would kind of be negligent if we did buy it, because we needed, the priority at that point would have to shift based on the conditions and the criteria that exist at that time. I would offer to you, our current system doesn't set up very well for us to handle that. Could we make it work if another blizzard like that happened next year under our current system? Yeah, it's going to be so much more cumbersome, and opportunities for us to not be as efficient and speedy in our reaction would present themselves. And while this particular staff, who you have sitting in front of you today, would undoubtedly hit it out of the park, in 10 years' time, we might have other staff that aren't as efficient, and Lord help us then, right? So I'm going to be the one to acknowledge to you that this does represent greater authority with staff. I want to shoulder that responsibility, let you know I understand the ramifications for that, and just attempt to explain that we're doing all these additional steps that other cities don't do in an effort to combat that perception.
Right. No, and I appreciate that, and just like I say, just an opportunity to ask questions. And using your example, for example, blizzard of 82, we blow our snow budget, and the point is that you conceivably could make the decision going, yeah, I'm not going to buy that pickup truck, and I'm going to put it into additional snow and overtime and what have you. And your council may sit back and go, no, we want to do both. And we don't want you doing that. I mean, do you see what I'm saying? It's like, so, right.
So if I might, in that case, say the blizzard came in December and we'd already bought the pickup truck, but we still need all the snow materials. Then we'd have to come to council for an unanticipated expenditure and do an appropriation. So again, that control's still there. And so if it happens in January, we have time to adjust and come back to council and say, do you want to do a supplemental appropriation, or should we just cut this pickup out? Staff is telling you we can, type thing.
I guess the only other thing I'd say is that it's a mea culpa on me. Doug's been trying to get with me for like over a month on this because he knew I'd have questions about it, and I just didn't pay enough attention and get with him in time. So unfortunately, it's just on me that these additional things are coming now.
How long ago was it that you looked
I
at
think,
this?
to summarize, obviously there's the process where the city council approves every single penny that absolutely minimizes any potential for abuse. There's the other end of the spectrum where it's a free-for-all for staff, maximizes potential for abuse. We've been somewhere in the middle. This is changing our position a little bit in the middle, changing those thresholds. And so I guess that, the question is, have we come to the right numbers and the right levels of tolerance that should something happen, which is unlikely, but if it did, the risk and the exposure of that, are those the right numbers?
And
maybe-
to help with that, there is still more in the presentation.
Okay, we were just stopping at this point, okay.
Yeah,
Councilmember
City
Guard, do you
Manager
have a
Kramer
question
stole
about-
some of my thunder.
Yeah, I have a
but-
question about the tables. So just so that I'm clear, tables 1 and table 2 really are only signing authority because those are all items that have been approved in a budget. Okay. And then table 3, non-emergency unanticipated expenditures. And I guess, and granted, it's up to 75,000. I kind of worry that there's no cumulative cap, right? I mean, so every month, could there actually be a $75,000 thing? Yes. And if these are non-emergency, why can't they come before council? I see a different situation for emergency expenditures, but $75,000 is a lot under our budget. And I'm not sure, I guess I'm saying I'm not sure those are the right numbers for a non-emergency situation.
I can give you a little more context there. If it's a single purchase, then yes, it is that dollar amount. But if it's a contract and it's going to be renewing year after year, then we actually add that whole contract amount. So if it's 3 years at $25,000, then that's a $75,000 purchase in essence. So it does create, it's not just a single year budgeted
It
amount.
could be
It's the
either
full
way,
contract
right?
amount
Could
is
be either way,
how we determine that threshold.
yeah.
But to your point, if a single purchase and 75,000 represents a number that city council is not comfortable with, this is an area that a lot of other cities don't have a lot of discretion on. They don't make the same category in the same way that we are. We wrestled with what the amount was as well, and there wasn't a lot of other guidance like there was with tables 1 and 2. So let me just say, if this number is not comfortable for council, we are absolutely open to adjusting that number. This was probably the area where we made the biggest guess.
Okay,
Counselor Sheldon,
and
oh,
let
wait,
me-
sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. And then on table 4, unlimited authority, 25,000 and above, the city manager could go out and spend $4 million without coming to council, or at least in the prior policy, it looked like you had to consult with the mayor or the mayor pro tem in an emergency situation. But I read this as saying you could go spend $5 million in an emergency situation without consulting anybody.
Consulting is certainly something that we can carry over, no problem.
Well, and I'm not sure it should be unlimited either. That just
there
and
is
again, of course, I am not.
Well, there is an
concerned
asterisk.
where If I knew you
There
always.
is, yeah, there's the council ratification has to occur nonetheless for anything over 75,000.
But
Or after you've already spent the money,
yeah, what does that mean? I mean, the money's gone.
right?
What if council doesn't ratify it? It's kind of
Well, we don't need to, do you? I mean,
over
it-
75,000,
Okay. What is that, what is the asterisk?
or over
refer to?
25,000.
Sorry, I said
25.
75, my bad.
Huh?
Nothing.
So I'm raising those 2 issues. And then I wasn't sure where in the policy it talks about for non-emergency unanticipated expenditures. It talks about there has to be money in the budget to cover that. I'm sure it's in there, I just didn't know where it was. 'Cause there were-
Oh, page 7 of the policy, it's section 6. Spending and signature authority is where you can find the tables.
So page 7, purchasing policy. Oh, this is the old one. What section is it?
It's section 6, and it's under B, unanticipated expenditures. Unanticipated, are you looking for the definition of what that is?
I'm
and how it
sorry,
can be-
I'm just having trouble finding the page.
I think, so her question was, I think what you've said was that there still had to be money left in that line item. And
Well, I don't, was it,
where does it say that? Is that correct?
yes, that's my question.
Unanticipated expenditures arise when the expenditure amount exceeds the estimated expenditure amount appropriated by city council, or when an unforeseen expenditure is required for an unbudgeted expense.
But see, we've already said, though, it's not a line item. I mean, because it's department by department. The line items are all going to smush around.
Yeah, it's by department, and obviously, the city manager is going to hold the department heads accountable for their
Right.
departmental budget, so.
But
And that's why we have the extra layer where we have the city manager
Right.
signature
But
authority.
to Councilor McGuire's question, I don't think we do explicitly state
Right.
as a policy that the budget has to be there for the expenditure itself. So and I think that makes good sense, if that's something we would like to add, that's certainly something that you could direct staff to add to the policy itself without having to necessarily wordsmith it here tonight. For non-emergency specifically, yes.
Yeah.
So you could add that as an amendment, not, or, you know, within your motion, you could add that kind of language. I think it probably makes good sense.
Am I the only one that's concerned about these numbers in the table?
No, I agree with you that particularly in Table 4, the unlimited, there is some number that warrants an emergency council meeting. I mean, there's some disastrous circumstance that's going to require $1 million that probably also requires the council to get together. I don't know what that magic, right? I mean, that would be something, it's COVID, it's, the building burned down. I don't, you know, I mean, it's.
I think.
Is there any way we could just, let him just get through the presentation first?
Yes,
'cause
okay.
there's
Oh, I'm
a couple other
sorry.
things,
Okay.
yeah, and then we can circle back to this. I absolutely want to have the conversation. I just want to make sure.
Okay, please continue.
Okay, no, great discussion. In referencing city spending, council may be wondering how city staff determined the recommended purchase limits. So in this slide, it is a comparison of the city draft policy in column 1 as compared to 5 neighboring cities, showing the spending dollar amounts for various purchases and the city staff or authorizer who is authorized to make purchases. A review of the other city policies indicates that generally the smaller cities such as Lone Tree and Greenwood Village may have lower spending thresholds based on smaller scale contracts. A larger city such as Inglewood and Centennial, which Centennial has a higher volume of contracting, provides higher limits for the city manager to improve operational flexibility. So after this analysis, it does show that the director limit of $50,000 and the city manager limit of $100,000 in the 2024 policy for non-capital items appear to be in the middle range for the directors and toward the lower end of the range for the city manager spending authority. After reviewing these results, staff feels these thresholds are appropriate in the 2024 policy.
Can I just ask a question here? The one that jumped out at me was the director, or, first of all, how is director or designee different from director?
Because the director can designate.
Okay, and the other one that can't be designated? Because $20,000 is more than anybody else, and those cities are much bigger than us.
Right.
And what is
That's
under
good,
Greenwood
yeah.
Village, no threshold up to, I don't, what does that mean?
The appropriated amount.
So they
if
can
we-
sign any amount up to the
So
appropriate.
that would, what we were thinking there was the supervisor or manager in the field would have that authority to make that type of purchase as needed,
As long as it's been appropriated, they can sign
as
it.
long as it's been appropriated and budgeted for the most part. We also reviewed these other city policies for best practices related to many purchasing components such as competitive bid exemptions, definitions, and other processes and procedures that might be a good recommendation for our city policy.
And is there, I did not, looking at director or designee, I didn't see anything in here, but maybe I missed it, about how a director can designate who can sign? Or do we have that? I mean, we talk about how we designated to the city manager to sign.
Yeah, the designee is a person who is authorized to present or act on behalf of another person as evidence in writing by the person being represented or directing the actions of the designee
In the definitions.
in the definition section.
Yeah, it should be an employee, though, at least, right? Or we wouldn't have contractors be a designee.
That's correct.
That's correct. That's correct.
Can we specify that?
Yeah, we have,
And that direction should be approved by the city manager. That designation should be approved by the city manager.
Under 5C, general provisions, it does prohibit, well, it does direct that only city employees are authorized.
I think it might also help
we
to
can
just change
include-
the definition of designee on page 3 to be an employee.
Sure.
But again. it's
And
already
approved by the
covered in
city
five.
manager.
I knew there had to be
Yeah.
a catch-all in there, and there is.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody other than city employees are authorized
Right.
just to spend money on behalf of the city.
So just
I just
to,
don't want it to be confusing that,
I think we can have a list.
having just dealt with a
we're
lot
gonna-
of state statutes that have circular references that don't make sense.
so in an effort to not stifle this discussion and make you feel like there's too many changes, I think we've already crossed the threshold where we will basically take direction as council presents it and bring you back an amended version. So go crazy, go to town.
And I don't, is there more of the, I don't want to do, or is there more presentation? Okay.
Go ahead,
Okay.
finish it, and then we.
I think City Manager Kramer hit the highlights here, but we did incorporate a reporting process. And due to the city manager's contract signing authority, we've added another layer now. He will report back to the city council, which is required by the policy. And that'll be on a monthly basis, that we'll have a contract report that shows all the contracts that have been signed or purchase orders signed, as well as a separate report also listing the unanticipated expenditures, if that is applicable. And then we just wanted to note that we did make other administrative changes in this policy, updated the definitions, and also the municipal code regarding public works contracting is left unchanged. So this purchasing policy does not affect municipal code section 4310 on public works contracting. And then one important element too is we added an appendix for federal grant requirements, procurement requirements. So if the city were to receive a federal grant award, we would have to have grant procedures in place prior to using and expending those funds. So we do have that, and our new auditor has approved these procedures too for federal grants.
And this clearly took a lot of work, and I appreciate that. And thank you for that.
2 city managers have reviewed this. So we'll take this, take the feedback and,
Yeah, that's so.
nope.
Now's the time for the discussion.
now's
So
the
now's
time
where
for
we
discussion.
take the direction.
All right.
Yeah.
So, can we do this? Can we go back to the tables? Let's kind of start at the beginning. What was before this in the presentation?
Here's tables 1 and 2 for,
What is for the, okay, yeah, so let's go to tables 1 and 2. And we'll start here. Any discussion or changes or direction or things that we need to provide to staff about tables 1 and 2? No, we're good here.
Yeah.
Tables 3 and 4. These are the ones where I think, maybe, I know at least Councilor McGuire had some questions. I also have some, yes, Mayor Pro Tem.
Yep, thank you. Thank you, Mayor. I guess go back to table 2 for just a second.
Yeah.
I'm wondering about the logic that says a capital expenditure ought to be looser control than budgeted expense, non-capital. Those numbers are higher, right? Am I wrong?
Yes.
what's the question? I'm sorry.
Because
All right.
I think there aren't any capital expenditures that are $5,000.
No, I mean, but I'm looking at, a threshold of 100,000 and above, 300,000 and above, when I compare table 1 and 2, and I'm asking myself, money's money in a sense. Yes, you depreciate capital, and so the annual hit isn't necessarily the same impact as a P&L expenditure, but on the other hand,
What's the difference between authorizer and authorized signer?
We have somebody that actually authorizes that purchase, but then it'll go up the chain for the authorized signer to actually be the approver. So there's 2 layers of control on each transaction.
Yeah, so you're going to buy the truck, or, the director says, yes, we're going to buy the truck, But the
So
city manager actually signs the,
So the director's not, the director's got the same signing authority.
Use a
in
real
both
example.
Tables, right, up to 50,000. After that, the city manager has to sign it, although the director authorizes it. I mean, I don't know what authorizing really means because it doesn't bind the city until the contract is signed.
Yeah, that's more the process of
Yeah.
going out and getting those bids. So I would tell my staff, go get me 3 bids for the truck. I would look at those, decide which one, but Chris would sign that contract. Also, if we're talking about non-capital.
But it's a protection for the city. I mean, the authorizer versus the signer. I mean, the point is if the signer didn't get authorization, it's not a valid purchase. Correct. I mean, the city, I mean, they've got an issue, but the point is that the employee exceeded his authority.
Yeah.
And so
All I'm
there are
pointing out
remedies
is
associated with
The
that.
director has the same signing level of
Yes.
authority in
Right.
both tables.
Right.
Well,
They just are the
But,
authorizer.
but to
a higher
Randy's,
level.
Randy's point, though, this, on the capital assets, or at least, I don't know if it was your point.
Yeah.
My concern, because when I think capital assets, again, I'm thinking of graders, I'm thinking of trucks, I'm thinking of big goods. And I'm really, really comfortable with, you know what, we ain't gonna buy some toilet paper, and I'm gonna buy some pens, and I'm gonna get rid of this, and I'm gonna and you're all over the place, and you're schmoozing things around, like, I'm really comfortable with that. I'm less comfortable with sitting back and going, yeah, we ain't gonna buy that grader today, and we're gonna go buy something else. I mean, that is a major change for a city this size. And that's what I struggle with.
That's not in these two tables.
Yeah, it is.
Table 2, I think, is going to mainly deal with vehicles.
Yeah, they're budgeted, but that's the point is within budgeted purchases, that means it's there. There's a grader in there for $300,000. You have the ability to sit there and go, it's in there. I mean, it's been budgeted. I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna take it and I'm gonna put it, I'm gonna buy X, Y, Z over here.
no, that's the thing, no, it hasn't necessarily, that grader hasn't necessarily been budgeted. It sounds to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, that we're operating at the public works level. That's what's authorized, not a particular line item for a particular purchase or something along those lines. Have I misunderstood?
Well, the way I interpret that is if we put a grader in there for 300,000 and decide, no, we're going to go buy a dump truck for 300,000, we'd have to come to council because now we're doing, well, you guys did not authorize a dump truck. You authorized
That's
a grader.
unanticipated.
That's unanticipated, so that flips into the next one. And council would have ultimate authority.
Okay, so give me an,
Only for what we agree,
So if,
something that's already
yep.
budgeted.
if
no,
we-
I get that, but there's budgeting of the original one and then there's budgeting of where you move the money.
Right.
And you're basically saying they both have to be in there. In which case then I'm going,
Yeah, but
what's an example of that? What's an example of 2? A big, let's use a $200,000 item. I mean, what's an
greater than
example?
Well, these are all budgeted for, though.
Tables 1 and 2 are budgeted.
so let's say that they're gonna buy 2 graders and 3 trucks. Yeah, what is the example?
Okay,
Well,
I get it now.
Maybe we should give you a question rather than, help clarify.
I get it.
What is line item and what is departmental? Because I had the impression that it was managed at a departmental level, as long as you were kind of coloring inside your lines.
Right.
You could
Well, the
substitute.
capital.
Capital
budget's
assets,
different. Yeah.
right, can go into the capital fund, which we have police items, we have public works items, we even have city, community development items in the capital fund. So this outlines how you'd purchase real tangible items, right, as opposed to services or things like that that might be covered in non-capital goods.
But things that are specified in the budget.
Correct.
1 dump truck, 2 police cars.
Correct.
Whatever they are.
Exactly.
All this says is it's already been approved in the budget. Here's who can get the bids and here's who signs.
Correct.
That's
That's
exactly
all
right.
these
So
two.
That's all it says.
I'm trying
And that's
to-
actually table 1 and 2.
One
Yes.
is
It's the same thing. So basically, 1 and 2 is going, I mean, there's no moving anything around.
Right.
You have the ability to go out there and buy those line items. These are the authorizers, here's the
We
authorized
said go buy a
signer,
truck,
and it just moves
here's the
along.
person who's gonna buy it.
Right.
And who's gonna sign off. The question that I have, just trying to remember back to what we see when we approve the budget, though. If I remember correctly, it doesn't say, one truck, 100,000. It'll say,
Yeah, it does.
like, it does?
Yes, it does.
Okay,
So if
and
there's
for
multi-
capital items?
Yes, so
Yeah.
if there's multiple vehicles, it spells out each vehicle and each cost.
Okay, so what about then, I feel like I remember seeing, over on the note side, repairing the bridge, regrading, resurfacing trails, and it's like a big list of
Yep.
things, and they don't have individual,
In most cases, they do. In some
Okay.
cases, it just says trail and park repair, and it just a lump sum.
Yeah.
But if you look at the notes, it says, it will spell out, in most cases, exactly
Where you
what
came
that
up
lump
with that.
sum came from.
And the dollar amount usually in the notes.
because I guess
that's what I
what I am concerned about here now more than anything is that, if it wasn't listed in that little line of notes, that you can't do it. And that, I don't want that to become overly restricted. When we budget a certain amount for parks maintenance, I don't need to see an exhaustive list of, I'm going to cut 10 blades of
Yeah.
grass, I'm going to trim
Well,
5
that-
bushes, I'm going to.
One good example would be, we put all road maintenance materials in one lump sum. And then we put, 25,000 for asphalt, 10,000 for road base. If we flop those, we aren't coming back to council, but those were just our guesses
Right.
as to here's what we historically spend on each of those. Even though
Well, and
it's-
so that's where I'm just getting confused. I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
But then, if that's the case, is it okay when we've got 2 trucks and I don't know. I just want to make sure that we're
I
not getting too granular.
But that needs some clarity, what's a line item or a particular, at least for me. When are we departmental, where's that discretion versus, towing to the particular line item and what it was comprised of?
So I will just say for capital assets, I do think that there's an opportunity within the capital fund or the capital, all those capital projects to have some flexibility between those. Does that commingle police and public works? Sometimes it does give us that opportunity to do that. I remember one of my first years, I was not city manager yet. I think we had some, I believe Director Goldie, Deputy City Manager Goldie, took one for the team and actually forego through the budget process some expenditure. It wasn't anything as large as like a vehicle, but it allowed for some other police purchase. I forget what it is. It's a horrible example. A horrible example. But anyway, I do think that there's an opportunity within the capital fund to mix between the capital fund, capital assets, right? For services and professional services budgeted, that would be within the department. That has to be within the department. And if we need to say that, we certainly can.
Say that again, what's got to be within the department?
Non-capital goods.
Like number
services,
1,
professional services.
that's the pencils, the pens, toilet paper,
Yeah.
yeah, maintaining
Okay,
the trails.
then yeah,
If-
and now we're back, then what I'm saying is if there's a distinction between table 1 and table 2, it needs to be specified what that distinction is. It's not right now. I mean, right now, I said, hey, 1 and 2, it sounds like, okay, these are for line item appropriations, you guys just go ahead and do whatever you need to do. I was very comfortable with that. Now it sounds like you're saying, no, table 1's going to be moving it around a little bit. And by the way, table 2, the capital improvement plan, it is in there. It will say police vehicles. It will say street vehicles. It will say that. And if I'm very comfortable with, again, for budgeted items, you guys just going ahead and doing it.
Yep.
And getting it done. I'm not comfortable with saying, yeah, we're gonna, I thought we were gonna buy 5 police cars and we went out and bought a grader instead and moved it around. I'm not comfortable with that. Okay, I'm not.
Yeah.
Okay, and so somewhere in here, we just need to distinguish between table 1 and table 2. We'll get to 3 and 4, but what the differences of those are, this line item versus departmental type stuff. Because my sense is Table 2, we are basically talking about appropriations in that capital improvement plan.
Yes.
And they are very specified.
Yes.
I mean, that doesn't mean that you won't, like you were talking about, there might be, something in there, but for the most part, it's very specific.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that we can use some additional language within the policy to help clarify the differences between Table 1 and Table 2 as it relates to department versus the capital improvement plan. And then also furthermore, include some additional clarifying language that are we meaning department or individual line item? And for both of those different categories.
Yeah, just say what you want.
Exactly right. Fair enough. All right.
Okay.
Well, I suspect though that we won't be done with conversations about 3 and 4.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So I think that summarizes comments to tables 1 and 2, right? Let's go to 3 and 4. So, Councilor McGuire, back to let's start with your thoughts on table 3. Again,
Well, my first question would be, certainly at the higher levels, that if it's non-emergency and unanticipated, I'm not sure why it couldn't come to council to begin with. And so
yeah, but
Yeah, it does
that's,
at
so that's,
75,
is that the
right.
right number?
But I guess
Should
my
it be
question is
lower?
why in any, so what's the right number? Is it 75 or is it 50? If it's non-emergency and unanticipated, why wouldn't it just come to us as a matter of?
We can do that too, just to be clear. This is of all these, right, that we're out here a little bit more on this one, so.
And so maybe this is where kind of, but if you have within your department budget excess funds, maybe there's some number we don't mind if you go and spend it on something. But I don't think it's 50,000. I mean, I think 50,000 is a lot of money.
Yeah, I think, other thoughts about that?
I think I agree that if it's not an emergency, I just think your number is a little high on the $75,000. I mean, if it's not an emergency and but yet it's unanticipated, like Susan said, I think there is time for something to come here. I don't know that it even has to be as high as $50,000. I mean, again, it's just sort of the same principle. If it has time to come here, why is that something that should not come through us?
So I guess the one example that was brought up would be not an emergency necessarily, but an opportunity that has an expiration date on it, right? That, like buying some, supplies or the flock cameras or the,
Is that literally on less than a 2-week? Are those type of things fleeting opportunities that doesn't allow for a council meeting? I mean, if they are, then I think they fall into the emergency category almost. I mean, it's a fleeting opportunity that we're going to get a 40% discount on something. I think that pretty much falls into the time-sensitive category.
We'd have to change the definition of emergency.
yeah.
Well, sure.
Like,
Literally, because we actually define emergency in this particular policy.
Yeah.
And it,
But the other thing on this table 3, let me just, because you know me, I always say, hey, if we're going to say it, I want to make sure we're doing it and not doing it. Why do I not believe that a director would authorize $24,999 of expenditures unanticipated without talking to the city manager? Why do I believe that Doug wouldn't do that? And if he comes to you and talks to you about it, he ain't authorizing it, you are.
well, that's true.
I mean, this.
But he could then
Again,
have
it's
the
the same
ability to
thing.
go
It's the same.
execute.
Whatever we say we're going to do, that's what we do, right?
Would it make more sense to completely remove table 3?
Agreed.
Well,
Because that's what we have.
or just turn it into 2, maybe there's just 2 line items that's up to 25 city manager, and then 25 and up, city council.
I think that's getting into the weeds too much for the city manager, because now you're talking about a non-emergency unanticipated expenditure of $1,200 should go to our city manager?
No,
Yes.
no, These annual or?
Up to
Up to 20
$25,000
yeah,
should
but
go to
if
the city
it's-
manager, is what she
yeah,
said.
Yeah, so if it's 1,200, that
1,200 would go to the city manager? An $800 bill should go to the city manager if it's on an unanticipated, unbudgeted expense?
Yeah.
That makes no sense.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I guess who, can anybody, one director could go make a bunch of $800 expenditures.
Well, that,
I mean,
now we're
you
back to
know,
a definition. I think we
right,
need to
yeah.
quantify whether it's an aggregate or a single time, but I think
Maybe go
my
back
big
to the
picture thought
numbers.
on this whole thing is the more we can delegate,
Right.
we trust our employees, our staff, at least I do, and I think we all do. We should be delegating those powers as much as we can, as much as we're comfortable with our taxpayers' money, to give our staff that flexibility to be paying these bills and authorizing these expenditures. I don't need or care or want to see stuff until it rises to a really quite a high level. And I'm thinking like 50 or greater. I don't know if it needs to be 75 before I see it, but 50, I think.
Well, yeah,
I would tend to say that
but-
any unbudgeted expenditure.
But for the
should be-
non-emergency,
yeah.
and to Susan's point, I mean, again, it's like either that goes away or otherwise it's small. It seems to me that it's like non-emergency,
Next rate.
unanticipated, up to 5,000 is director, and then maybe city manager is 25,000. I mean, anything unanticipated, non-emergency, you're going to come to council, I think, at the end of this. You got flexibility. And then for emergency, it does need to be higher. Oh, you don't think so?
I just,
Let Randy
Let
say
me,
it, yeah.
let me
let
ask a
Randy say it.
practical question. How often does this happen in the larger magnitudes like that?
Not in the larger magnitudes, the smaller magnitudes, it happens a lot.
All the time.
Like, okay, let's forget about under 25 for a minute.
5,000 bucks.
What happens, and my mind is single event, not annual amount. So, yeah, how many times is there something goes on over a decision over $25,000 that's unanticipated, not budgeted, and non-emergency?
That would be not very often.
Not, did I hear you right? Not very often?
Not very often, with all of those.
We could go an entire calendar year and that not happen.
Uh-huh.
Would you agree? I'm looking at both of you because you guys are the
Yeah, no,
two main.
those are few and far between, and I can't even think of a situation right now, because all the situations I keep thinking of are emergency, where it's,
Right.
I'm out in the field and I'm just going to say no.
But to be clear, I'm thinking of like parks budgets, for example, 4,000 for parts repair. We got a schedule to keep this.
Yeah, we blew an engine, we're just going to
Correct.
go have a new engine put in, even if we've already spent all of our money
Right.
with Englewood, we're just going to do it.
Yes.
That's one, but that's an emergency again.
Well, that,
Is it?
There's an interesting question.
Yeah,
I have two good examples.
okay.
Because I actually have a couple of situations coming up here. So in 2 weeks, you might see an item for a court contract for court software replacement. We did not anticipate that in the budget process a year ago, but we did find a product for software that would save 40% of the staff's time if we implemented it right away, because of the way it implements the ticket citations into the court software system. And it's such a manual process right now. So we'd rather not wait until the 2025 budget. We'd like to implement right away. It's taking a long time just to go through the contract negotiations. It's $13,000 a year in maintenance cost. It's $30,000 to implement this software. If you aggregate the contract for 3 years, it's $96,000. So that would fall over the city manager unanticipated limit. So it's going to come to council. I have another unanticipated expenditure for accounting software that would help me to deal with this new accounting standard that I'm required to deal with. And it has to do with IT subscriptions, ironically. But it's $8,000 a year. I'd like to get that for 3 years. So that's $24,000, another $1,500 to implement. That's $25,500. So if you look at it here, that's to the city manager level. It wouldn't have to go back to council.
Right.
So there's two examples Did not plan for that one, but I'd like to implement before the auditor is here in early next year, if we could.
And Doug, if I'm not mistaken, with the court software, they are basically saying there's a clock ticking. If we can agree to this purchase by a certain date, we're going to be counted as a certain, they basically are going to become too overextended, and we will not be able to implement it for months.
So there are some,
It might be a sales pitch. Randy's heard these before. It might be, but I think it does, there's a good example of how that would fall into this category.
but the pricing would be locked in for 3 years on both
Right,
of those,
right.
so.
And trust me, I mean, first of all, I completely trust not just the honesty, but the wisdom in the decision-making and all of that. So this is not about that. It's just about where do you set thresholds? And,
Right.
if we've got something at 75,000 and it just never happens, or it happens once, it's like, maybe that's not.
Just to be clear, I can't express this to council enough. Should you so choose to make it 5 and 10, we will absolutely do that, right?
yeah.
Let me ask
So
you a
let's-
question.
yeah.
Let me ask you a question, because I don't know that everybody's agreement on this. Does everybody agree or disagree? Do you think the levels need to be higher? If we have table 3 and 4 like that, do you agree that the table 4 needs to be higher than table 3? Sure. Or the other way around?
No, I think when you have an emergency, you should be a little looser on controls.
I agree.
to
Okay,
do
well,
it.
that's a
Yes.
good thing then.
4 should be higher.
So,
Four should be higher.
So that's a good thing then. We're agreement on that.
In these examples that Doug just mentioned, my initial reaction to the first one, which is, $96,000 over 3 years, my initial reaction was, yeah, that should come to council.
It's a big buck relative to the total.
Okay, so, and in this policy, it would have, okay, so that sounds right to me. The second one, the court software, I actually think that should come to council too. And in this scenario, it would not have, it would have gone to the city manager.
Right. No, and I think so too, and if for no other reason than, there's time. I mean, you just talked about the process you're going through there. We have a council meeting every 2 weeks. I mean, you've been talking with these guys for a while. There's time to come and go, hey, we're going to be doing this. We haven't gotten there yet, but we're going to be doing it. What's wrong with that? That's not a bad thing.
Yeah, so
Right.
it sounds like it sounds like
Trying to bring
there's
it
some
together.
agreement that these numbers should be lower, except maybe Dan might not agree, but, so are we at a, like up to 25 as a director and above 25 comes to council? Or is up to 25 city manager and above 25 comes to council? And is there some even lower number that's a director or?
That's where I was. I said originally 5,000 and 25,000 for the non-emergency. But for the emergency, it's
Well,
got to be,
yeah.
it's got to be higher.
Let's say, so is that direction everyone can live with? 5, 25, 50?
Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, but the current policy shows $10,000 as a limit for unbudgeted transactions.
Okay, so maybe
Current
not.
policy does?
Current policy,
Go backwards.
All right,
Well, yeah.
throw in 10.
which apparently Earl wrote.
Okay, so 10, 25, 50? Is that
Half as much.
feel
So
people?
just so I'm clear, 10 is a director approval,
Yeah,
25 would be a city manager approval,
yeah,
up to 25.
up to 25,
And then 25 and $1 would go to council.
yeah. Because it's rarely
I'm-
going to happen.
I'm good with that.
Okay,
I'm fine.
I'm good.
okay, all right, so that's table
10
3.
10 and 25, right?
Yeah, 10, 25, 50.
Well, wait, the 50 is what's throwing me.
It's 10, 25, 50. 10,
No,
I
10,
thought it's
25.
10
I mean, I'm just saying, up to 10 is director, up to 25 is city manager.
over 25.
Over 25.
Over 20, anything over.
That's.
Oh, yeah,
No
okay.
50.
Sorry,
Right.
Okay,
yeah, sorry.
and that's table
Okay.
3.
Yep. And then emergencies. How do we feel about that number? I agree with the no limit.
What's the current emergency protocol?
So we do have a definition of emergency on page 3.
No, I mean the monetary limits. The monetary limits. It's like it has to, over a certain amount, it has to be approved by the mayor, right? Or the mayor pro tem?
Yeah, I think in consultation with, or,
The city manager or designated department director shall obtain verbal approval from the mayor or in his or her absence, the mayor pro tem, prior to initiating non-appropriated emergency purchase or service in excess of $100,000. Immediately following the purchase, a written report shall be made by the authorizing individual, the city manager's office, stating the nature of the emergency, the amount of the type of the expenditures. This report shall be distributed to the mayor and city council within 7 days of the emergency.
So to me, that number, I don't know if 100 is the right number, but that upper limit needs to be the number at which it is putting the city in some sort of real financial danger. Dipping into reserves, something that is,
Are we talking about,
only the council can do that.
are we talking about changing this down to one row now under?
No, I think
table 4?
we're at 25 and above, I think there needs to be another line.
Okay, so we're going to keep the first row of up to 25 will be director and director,
Yeah,
or
I'm okay
whomever
with
we
that.
choose that to be.
Yeah.
And then now we're just talking about the real, true big boy emergency.
Yeah, like what's I don't think the city manager can go spend $4 million.
Okay, so it's,
Like
so
that would
it's
bankrupt the city.
$25,001 up to fill in the blank
Right. Is city manager. And then
is city manager, and then anything above that needs to have
the mayor or the mayor pro tem.
Okay.
Because in an emergency, we can't get the whole council together.
right.
But it has to have, it can't just be.
So is
So then
it
there's a third-
25,
there's a third
100,
box.
Like,
and
Right.
I don't think it
Yes.
could be just one person. I think it's got to be, two people concurring that this is an
Well, that's the
emergency.
question. Is there then a situation where if you're going to spend, and let's just say 4 million, you need to have an emergency council meeting? Or is it just if the mayor or the mayor pro tem says, okay, you're okay?
Are these type of emergencies, the type of things that, that are so expensive, so emergent? I mean, fighting a fire, you need to bring out all the stops.
Right.
Flood.
I mean, I don't
You know,
even
I'm-
think
I'm
we'd
trying to
ask.
think
We
what
wouldn't
kind
even
of
ask
realities
how much
we're
that
seeing.
costs, right?
Pardon me?
We wouldn't even ask how much fighting a
Well, that's what
fire
I mean,
costs.
but-
We would just,
No, that's the type of instance, though, that, when we're sitting here trying to come up with a number, I'm trying to put in my mind the type of events that are emergencies, that, we ran out of snow melt, and it's a
so-
huge blizzard.
looking at
That's not an
this, right, an
emergency.
existing or immediately impending dangerous situation or condition that necessitates immediate
Yeah,
action
tornado.
to stop or prevent damage of property, et cetera, et cetera. Remember the flood
Yes,
here?
that's it.
And we had to go rent those fans and whatever over with the church property over
posts.
there, and, yeah.
So in a past life at another city, the city manager had to make, and they actually designated the emergency operations coordinator, the one to be able to do it. This all gets into the emergency response. So anyway, they had to evacuate because of flooding, a senior housing facility. They had to evacuate 2 low-income housing projects that the city actually had invested in. And for one night, they put them in a gymnasium, which was horrible. And they quickly realized they couldn't do that, so they then paid hotel vouchers, basically, and moved all these people, some of which had real medical situations going on. The price tag of that single action was huge, and that was a flood. Another example, I don't know, if we had a shooting, these are the,
Yeah.
correct, that's right. So those are the kinds of emergencies that this contemplates, to be clear.
And you
We
might not
have to
even have an
declare-
estimate.
We have to declare an emergency, as I recall, for all this to kick in, right? Like with COVID, we declared an emergency and that changed the,
Well, it doesn't say that here.
I don't think it says that.
no?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I mean, I do think there needs to be some upper limit at which there just needs to be 2 people, right?
Sure.
I mean, not a power play per se, but it just can't be it can't be just the mayor, it can't be just the city manager, it just needs to be 2 people. And so what's the number And I'm comfortable with it being the mayor or then the mayor pro tem.
So just carry over the language that we had from before.
Yes, and
Right.
but is it 100 or is that number now bigger?
I think it's 250.
250? Yeah,
That's the number that, I think we go up to 25,000 at the director level, up to 250 at a city manager level. I mean, we're talking middle of the night, all heck's breaking loose. I think our city manager should have some autonomy to move freely with up to $250,000 decisions. And then 250 or greater then triggers the mayor,
You need
mayor
a
pro tem,
second
and
person.
if somebody's not available, it trickles to council members.
And again, pardon my confusion, but are we talking an event? Or are we talking a purchase order? Like, we got to go rent some pumps or something like that?
Well, no, is it the entire expense of the entire
the limit of
event?
what?
Or is it like, we had to rent the fans for the flood and we also had to, that's one
I-
cost and this is another, or is it?
No,
the
I think
whole-
it's how much he can spend all in before he has to go.
That's probably right. I mean, we're
On
talking,
the
it's going to
emergency.
be an event
It's-
that is
it's-
triggering this, whether it's a fire, a flood, or
I
a.
hear what you're saying.
And I'm okay, but if it's like 250, 250, 250.
No, that's right.
No, no, I think it's
I think it's aggregate.
Then, yeah.
Aggregate?
So
Yeah,
an
we should
emergency.
clarify that
would
as
be
well.
Aggregate response.
Pretty soon you get some real money.
And then what were those numbers you said again?
I
Up
just
to,
said 25,000, 250, and then at 250 and above
okay.
has to
to
come
get
to
a second
some
percent.
form of
Yeah.
electeds.
Okay. Okay, is that
That's
clear
just-
as mud? All right. That's good.
To be clear,
Do you think that you guys, you're grimacing?
Yeah, oh, yeah.
That's a lot of money.
Seems like a lot of dough.
250?
Yeah.
I mean, I think
I
about.
could be talked into 150. I think it'd be silly for us to stay where we are.
No, no,
think
I
we
agree,
need to move
I
it up.
agree. I was gonna say 150. I mean, that's kind of where I was, just to.
Well,
I mean, I think what we're doing though is, while the numbers of hotel vouchers, I mean, I guess you could have that in a flood. But, how quickly are you gonna get to 150 versus 250 aggregate wise? You've got fans, you got maybe, evacuation costs. I mean, this is guesswork
Well,
for
let me say
I mean,
this.
I'm kind of,
But the thing
flying
that you're
by-
missing is the guesswork is, but the point is that, and I do expect you to call a special meeting of council.
That's,
Okay?
I was,
mean,
yeah.
It's like, what are you gonna spend in 24 or 48 hours? That's it. If it's going beyond that, I expect there to be a special council meeting.
I
At
was,
least
I was
do.
about to say, as the mayor, if you're spending 150 on anything,
And have
I
a
wanna
telephone
know.
call. Yeah.
like, I want to know that something's going on
would
that's
it-
requiring, and not that I don't trust the way you're spending the
Sure,
money, but
I
that's a
understand.
serious event that's occurring in a city this size, and I think I'm sure that.
any city manager worth their salt
So
would
it's a
want you
question
to
of the
know.
number, I mean, wherever we end up.
So-
I do think, and I agree with you, it would require two actions, and it's like, it's the mayor or the mayor pro tem and a member of council. I mean, the mayor pro tem acts in your stead,
Yes.
but it's one
Oh, I
of
meant
the
like
two.
the
one of
city
two.
manager and
Oh, really?
somebody, yes.
That's what it is now.
That's what it is now. It's
At
city manager
100,000.
and the mayor or the mayor pro tem.
Okay. Is that the way it is now?
That is the current word.
And that's at 100,000 and it's been that way since 2015.
bump that up though, right?
Yes.
We
I
can
think
bump it
that's
up
what we're talking
to
about.
150. Sure.
150.
Okay.
It's fine. I don't
150, yep.
feel
Yeah,
strongly.
that's fine.
I would be curious to know if you could talk to the people, and was it Broomfield or Westminster that had the big fire?
Oh, it was like
And
Long-
and
What kind of
where
cost
we
did
were
that?
Before, what did they spend in the first
Yeah.
24
Yeah,
hours?
we can do some research on that.
Because I don't want them to be hamstrung either. If it's an emergency and we
Well-
need to bring in,
Well, but
To your point, we aren't deciding this tonight. We're going to bring something back to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let us do some of that research.
yeah.
I'll just say, well, I'll wait till we're more closing
Yeah.
before I offer some
but I
big
would,
picture comments.
yeah. I think the thresholds are good. It's going to give us time to at least get started. I don't think we can spend $1 million in 24 hours. We're going to give the approval for the pumps or whatever it is, call the emergency meeting, and then
Yeah.
declare the emergency, because we're not going to know an end number, no matter what it is.
Yeah.
And
But you still got to start engaging those.
you got to
contracts.
start something. And I think, if the director has some and then the city manager, that gives us the time to engage with whatever we need up front
Great.
Yeah,
So we can
okay.
start the emergency process.
And then the other so that's it. I think we've covered the tables,
And-
right? We're
and-
good with the tables. Yeah.
One more, though, I think Councilor McGuire requested that we add some language that indicated that should we be making those unanticipated expenditures, that we must have those funds they have to be available. Because we currently don't.
In the non-emergency.
Yeah, non-emergency,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And then.
In that department's budget, right?
correct.
Yeah.
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 Not in the general fund, no. It's not, we can't use unspent police dollars to
Yes.
buy a community development plan. Right. Yes.
Okay.
And then the other comment was just around the designee thing and I just think generally, under the definition of designee needs to talk about employees
Employees,
and not
yes.
just people.
And approved by the city manager. I'm assuming the designees are set out in advance. Sorry.
I think in general, that actually, the designee is their designee. I don't
Yeah.
necessarily approve those all the time.
Like a project manager or my field staff.
So they would be done specifically on a project-by-project basis?
Correct.
It's
Correct.
not like-
And it might change.
And designees
may
are
change for
only,
every
that's the
expenditure.
smallest amount
Okay.
of money. So,
That's fine.
okay.
So I know we're getting ready to, we aren't going to vote on this tonight, which is appropriate. I'll just say, I know this conversation really got started in earnest at the retreat. I think I'd actually dropped off when you guys had this conversation. And it really got started with but I went back and watched. There's a lot of good conversation at the time about, we've had a system that really contemplated the old system where the mayor kind of ran everything, and we now have a city manager and a staff to kind of do all this stuff. And how can we start moving towards that a little bit more? And I think this certainly takes a step. But I want to be clear that we certainly want to do this in lockstep. We aren't trying to push for, increased authority that goes beyond anything city council's comfortable with. So I want to be very clear about that. So we will absolutely take this. We will do some additional research, bring it back to you at a future council session.
That sounds good. All
Can
right.
I-
Any
I
other
did-
thoughts?
Real quick, I guess what you all have told us tonight is that you have signed an implied 10-year contract to manifest the fact that the trust and confidence that we have in your decision-making right now is that nobody's going anywhere.
Yeah.
So we don't ever have to worry about these future people
Yeah,
that are
no
going to be
future people.
unstable.
I strongly advise against that, Council.
All right. Thank you for everyone for, it's a great meeting, good conversation. Moving on to 10, reports to the mayor. I'll just try to be fast. The Cherry Hills Land Preserve Barn Party is coming up on the 13th. I hope you're all planning on attending that. Dine for the High Line is on the weekend of the 21st, 22nd, I think. The 20th, okay. Friday, the 20th, so there's that event. The CML district meeting is here in Cherry Hills Village next week. If you are interested in attending, I think RSVPs are due to the clerk. Were they already due? I'm pretty sure,
I will say,
we could fit you.
us hosting is a big deal.
Yeah.
And right now we have 2 attendees.
Oh, really?
Okay.
So I was on my list to prod.
You mean like total CML?
No.
Oh, you mean just Cherry Hill? I was
are-
like, really?
No, we're the host.
I'm one of them.
We're the host, and it's a big deal to host.
No, it's at the Village Club.
It's at the Village Club. It's going to have dinner. It's
11th,
Tell
right?
me.
September 11th?
the 12th
12th.
Friday.
It was the 11th, it's now the 12th.
or Thursday the 12th.
But when you said two, there's only 2 Cherry Hills people or
It's
and
you
2
and me.
people,
Right.
period?
No, 2 Cherry Hills Village. Yeah, Earl and Katie. Yeah.
Add myself.
And Rob is adding himself. So if you're able to attend, it's at the Village Club. I think it starts at 5
5 it starts. Yeah.
with a cocktail thing. The Arapahoe County Mounted Patrol is coming to do a demonstration. And then 6 o'clock is dinner and the meeting, the CML meeting. And I'm sure they'll give us an update about the special session, and everybody goes around and kind of shares something about their community and what's going on. And I don't know if, do you think about to be serving council members are invited, if you're interested. I don't know, that's,
Not on the city's dime.
okay. That sounds fair. The
I guess
special
you're not saying
session,
most
yeah.
of it, yeah.
The special session just wrapped up. And I know that, so that should avert the ballot issues, and I'm sure that we'll hear more about that and how it will affect our budgeting process. And the next meeting, I just wanted to say for anybody who might be listening, we have our study session for the Quincy Farm Annual Plan, and I know this is a topic of interest to a lot of people, and so I encourage anyone who's interested to come and participate in that dialogue. And that's it. So we'll move to members of council. Councilor Eber.
No report.
No report.
No report.
Boy, I didn't expect for it to get to me so quickly. I know it's late. I got two quick things. Thank you, Chief Lyons and Mayor Brown, for attending the Charlevoix Block Party. I understand you were there. I was out of town, so thank you for attending that. I understand you maybe attended some others around the community as well. So thank you for participating and showing up on behalf of the city. And I wanted to extend a congratulations to all of city staff and council. We've been working real hard on Quincy Farm for a long time, and tonight was a big milestone, letting that contract. Please pass on to Emily our congratulations to her as well. I know she worked real hard on this. Thank you.
I am out of town for the next council meeting. I just wanted to make sure that didn't pose an issue.
Yep, that segues perfectly into my report, which is actually to ask everyone to look at their calendars for the October meeting. I believe you're the only one out of town for September 17th, so we should have a quorum, no problem for that one. But for October 1st and October 15th.
I know I am gone October 15th.
Do either of those fall on a Jewish holiday? Because I haven't looked yet.
No, I don't believe they
Then
do.
I'm not a problem. I will be attending.
Are you here for the October council meetings?
I'm here.
Both of them? Okay. Oh, okay, yep.
Dan, I believe you're out October 1st. What about October 15th?
Yes, I am out on the 1st, not available at this meeting.
Great.
And the 15th, I'm around.
I am out on I'm here on the 1st. I leave the 2nd, and I should be back by the 15th. Yeah, I'll be back by the 15th.
All right, no problem then. Thanks very much.
All right, thank you. Councilor Furman. Or Director Furman.
Yeah, no additional reports tonight. Thank you.
We covered my items, so thank you.
Okay. Director Goldie?
I have no additional report tonight.
Thanks. And Chief Lyons?
None either.
All right, well then.
Move to adjourn.
We are adjourned at 9:03 PM.